My then youngest son had gotten me up crying about a bad dream he was having at 3 a.m. He was 4 at the time. I calmed him down, then he told me he's hungry, so we went to the kitchen for a snack. He's sitting there eating cereal when he just kind of looks up and then casually tells me the boy who woke him up is sitting in the corner crying. Then he nods to an empty corner of the room by the table where we're seated. I asked him why the kid is crying, just kind of humoring him when he tells me his mommy crashed the car up the road and now he's trying to figure out what's going on. He woke me up. Please tell him to go. I thought it's my kid still shook from the bad dream. I looked at the corner and said, "Hey kid, go back to your mom." We keep sitting there and my son finishes his cereal and hands me the bowl. Just kind of joking around, I asked him whether it worked and if the kid had left. He then looks at me really seriously and says, "Yes, he told me the ambulance is coming, so it's okay. They're all dead anyways." And not even a minute later, a string of cop cars and an ambulance go past our house, sirens blazing. And I got this feeling of the most intense dread while the hair stood up on the back of my neck. I shook it off, told myself it was just my kid's imagination and a coincidence. We went back to bed. A few days later, my neighbor tells me all about the big wreck a mile up the street from us, where some lady was going too fast and flipped the car and no one survived. That was 3 a.m. in the morning on the night my kid had woken me up. I didn't dare ask her if a little boy was in the car. My dad was terminally ill when I was a teen. One night before bed, I went to say goodnight. As I stood in the hallway, I thought I saw someone standing by his bed. It was late, and it was just out of the corner of my eye, so I assumed it was just my mom. Out of nowhere, my mom came up behind me, made a soft gasping sound, and pushed me into the bathroom and shut the door. I was confused and stayed in there for maybe a minute. When I opened the door, she was standing there in shock. I asked her, "What was that for?" She said, "That was your grandfather standing over Dad." My grandfather had passed away about 2 years before. My dad passed away not too long after. My mum is sure that her late father was there to keep an eye on us at the end of my dad's life. A few weeks after my father died, my mum and I woke to aggressive banging on the sliding glass door on the first floor of our house. We found my little sister screaming and crying, "Let him back in. He wants back in. Please, someone." Stuff like that. She didn't remember it in the morning and doesn't remember it to this day.
My sister and I shared a room when we were tweens, and we both swore that it was haunted. We'd hear strange sounds and see weird stuff out of the corner of our eye. There was also an oppressive feeling of something very wrong once the sun went down. My sister and I were way too old to be afraid of the dark, and we were fine with darkness anywhere else. Eventually, my sister refused to sleep in the room. Mom, of course, didn't think there was any possible way we had ghosts, and thought this whole thing was ridiculous. That's until we went to summer camp. My mom told us her story when we got back, so we had been gone for a couple of nights. Our dad was working graveyard shifts, so Mom had the house to herself. She was getting ready for bed and heard laughter from our room. She heard it a few times before it struck her that we weren't there. Mom checked the room and the lights were on. Mom tried to convince herself that she was imagining things and turned the lights off. She heard the laughter again and she went to check again. The lights were on. Mom instinctively just shouted, "You kids go to bed," and she didn't hear them anymore. After that, Mom believed us, but we were still kind of stuck with the room. It was an old house that we had while we were saving up for a better place. My sister adopted a cat which helped for some reason, but it was months before the cat would go into our room without flipping out, like literally ears pinned back, growling, hissing, and bolting out of the room like a bullet. We eventually were able to move to a nice home, and even Mom was very happy to leave.
I once got a job to install a security system in an old house. The family that moved in there had a little boy, about 5 years old. The boy was playing around by himself near me, and he would sometimes ask random questions. I thought he was talking to me. I answered one of his questions, and I remember him telling me, "Oh, sorry, I was just talking to my friend." The mother poked her head in and told me that her kid had found a new friend since they moved in. She then leaned in closer and jokingly said, "It's actually kind of creepy." Well, later that day, the boy was in the kitchen playing, and he was trying to reach a bag of chips on top of their fridge. I told him he should probably get down off the counter, and I could get them down for him. He proceeds to get down and say, "Oh, my friend will get it." I just kind of shrugged it off and went back to working on running the cable through the wall. All of a sudden, the bag of chips explodes on the floor. I turned around quickly. I was sure that the kid had gotten down from the counter, and there he was on the floor picking up the chips. He gave me a look and said, "My friend accidentally knocked them off." I asked the boy where his friend was now, and he points on top of the fridge and said, "He's right up there smiling at you." I never got such a freaky chill in my life.
When I moved in with my boyfriend, he told me there was a ghost that had always followed him wherever he lived. I am a firm believer in the paranormal, but it really didn't bother me after some reassurances that he was benevolent. Not long after moving in, our roommate's girlfriend started staying over more often, and this ghost hated her. If she'd use our bathroom, the faucets would both turn on full blast. This would always cause her to run out of the bathroom with her pants around her ankles. The ceiling fans would turn on by themselves. The TV would increase volume on its own. You had to unplug it to get it to stop. We replaced the TV, but the new one did the same thing. After a few months of weird things happening, I awoke to the feeling of someone sitting at the foot of the bed. I felt the bed compress as though a real person had sat down. I jerked up and looked around and saw nothing, but there was an imprint in our comforter where someone had sat. Several more weeks go by, and finally the same thing happened again, only this time there was a man there. Big hat, trench coat, looked like he was straight out of a Western. After a few seconds, he disappeared. I told my boyfriend about him, and his response was, "Oh good, he finally let you see him." After that, it just became normal. He sat at the end of the bed most nights while I was pregnant, and then after the baby was born, he must have went in and sat with her. We would still catch glimpses of him here and there, and you'd hear footsteps when you're home alone. We eventually broke up, and I gotta say, I miss the ghost way more than the boyfriend.